Good morning, everybody. So, we have, yet again, another Fortis Colosseum update. If you haven't seen my Fortis Colosseum, the first look, go ahead and watch my last video. It should be pretty much almost a week ago. It might actually be a little bit more than a week ago, but I've shared some valuable opinions and takes on some of the content that they previewed there. And I'm assuming that this blog slash update that we are about to read through has a bunch of updates and reworks to what we read last week. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into it. Get ready to vote for Varlamore's most exciting blood sport. Are you ready to take on the Colosseum? Step through this grand entrance and find out. Someone's waiting for the audio read. He's a little under the weather, hence the husky tones. Okay, so that's the audio read there. We're back to chat Colosseum rewards and to make a few clarifications. There's still a little time before polling, which should give these tweaks plenty of time to sink in. Let's kick things off by talking rewards. Of all the rewards we shared with you last week, one generated more conversation than nearly all the others combined. Where it better to start than old school's first ever equipable quiver. That is crazy, right? We've just been using like a sack of rats and animals on our back this whole time. So that's always pretty crazy to think about. Anyways, Dishonna's quiver and charge scape. For the most part, you seem pretty on board with the new range cape slot upgrade, especially since it's the first time we're offering an actual quiver for those of you looking to feel that classic ranger fantasy. But what good is a quiver that doesn't hold any arrows? We hear you ask. Great question, and you're right. A quiver that doesn't hold any ammunition is no quiver at all. With that in mind, we'd like to give Dishonest Quiver the ability to hold at least 2 types of ammo. Exact number is still to be determined, and automatically select which one suits your current weapon. Use pop dragon arrows or root dragon bolts in your quiver. A twisted bow would default to using those arrows, while a zero crossbow would default to bolts. This frees up your ammo slot for a blessing or Gommel's lucky penny. It might even free up inventory slots in cases where you bring a crossbow switch. Handy. Okay, so I really like how realistic this is. A quiver not holding arrows before just didn't make sense. This is pretty good. I'm actually shocked that this did not actually cross my mind. It wasn't very immersive to not have arrows or ammo of some kind there. I really like this. Though I think it's already like really strong. I feel like 2 is probably enough because of it already being so strong. But yeah, this is really good. This is a good change. It's not like overly impactful in the way of like harming the game, but like it's nice. It's a nice little thing. When charged, ammo fired from the quiver gains an additional +1 range strength, totaling the +4 we showed off initially. This does 2 things. Alleviates a little concern about the toxic blowpipe being made disproportionately stronger compared to other ranged weapons when factoring in Dishonest quiver, and tease us up to talk about charges. Gains ammo fired from the quiver. Okay. So it has to be ammo that is actually fired from the quiver. So wearing this does not mean that you actually get that extra strength bonus applied to the toxic blowpipe. That's interesting. I actually really like this because the toxic blowpipe is just such a good range weapon already. And for the difficulty to acquire the toxic blowpipe, it's not very hard. So that is good. That's actually, yeah, that's pretty good. Sorry, I had to think a little bit. We'll open with the headline. We'll be giving players the option to corrupt their quiver so that it never runs out of charges, similar to the bow of Faradinin. That said, we wanted to shed a little light on our initial proposal, why we're fond of charge systems, role they play in loot tables, and ultimately why we initially proposed Dishonna's quiver as a non-corruptible charged item. As far back as the initial Tasakal Trials pitch, from which the Fortis Colosseum draws a lot of inspiration. I think that was the Blue Inferno. I could be wrong. We were keen on exploring the idea of a wave-based minigame with a tangible element of monetary gain and risk versus reward decision-making, which is something players seem pretty happy for us to explore both then and now. It's not controversial to say that difficult, active, and engaging content should be rewarding, but how exactly do we make things rewarding? In some cases, we can use untradeable uniques such as Dishonest Quiver itself to satisfy that reward element, while in others, monetary gain and tradable items that can be converted into GP fit the bill. This one's a combination of both. Those tradable items generally it says general there, but this is like 10 minutes after the patch or the notes dropped, so this is fine. The tradable items generally fall into a number of categories: alchables, supplies, uniques, or unique consumables. Hold on, I have to reread this. I'm sorry if the music volume keeps adjusting. Some of it's louder than the other, so I'm trying to keep the background music the same for y'all. It's not controversial to say that difficult. Yeah. So I agree with this. Generally speaking, we want to steer clear of adding. Yes. A million times yes. I despise this right now because so let me finish. Generally speaking, we want to steer clear of adding too many alchables to loot tables. Since it can be difficult to introduce gold sinks, yes, that make a meaningful enough dent in the amount of gold circulating in game, yes, and inflation is a concern for many players, yes. So I figured that they were going to explain it, so I had to stop myself and just keep reading. So with Slayer and all these new bosses that they keep introducing, a lot of bosses that they introduce, they have to make... They don't have to, but they feel as though that they do, and they struggle with balancing the drop table enough that what they do is they make the bosses inherently good GP per hour by adding alchables, supplies, herbs, things of that nature into the game that have almost a constant value because of how much they are already in the game and how traded they are, how much they get used. If you ever look at grimy Renar weeds, you'll see that they have like a set price, and then if you look at them right when a boss comes out, you'll notice that the price of them goes up because people make prayer pots more because the cost of prayer pots went up. And the same thing for snapdragons. That type of stuff happens because a boss comes out, and so like even if that boss drops more stuff, it has kind of a set value because it gets used so much. And so you start getting this massive like GP influx because all the GP goes to that. Some of it gets used up, but people buy so much of this. Anyways, I can ramble on and on about this. GP comes into the game at an alarming rate. And it becomes hard to make impactful gold sinks. They are 100% correct on this. Anyways, adding supplies lets players trade those supplies for GP, but risks weakening the position of those supplies in the economy and also exacerbating concerns about PVM outcompeting skilling too heavily for resource generation. Yeah, that's always been a thing. Like, you have to balance whether or not leveling, getting the supplies, and doing this boss or Slayer monster or regular monster, whatever it is better or more time efficient versus skilling and getting it that way. Like, obviously there's perks to certain things, but uniques are good, and we've got a handful of tradable uniques coming from the Fortis Colosseum, but it's difficult to predict their prices long term or to rely on them for consistent GP, so they need to be supplemented with other drops. Yes, however, your GP doesn't need to be super consistent. The final category is unique consumables, things like Revenant, Ether, or Ancient Essence, which tend to be an appealing option since they're constantly being used up and can be sold off without harming items that didn't exist before. In this case, that unique tradable consumable is Sunfire Dust, which we positioned as being used up by the Glaive of Ralos, Sunfire Rune Creation, and Dishonest Quiver. For these unique consumables to hold a good value, they need to actually be consumed so that they're in demand, and the best way to do this is to make the things consuming them useful in a number of scenarios rather than being overly niche. The reason for us initially aiming to make Dishonest Quiver a solely charged item is to provide a constant use case for Sunfire Dust and help keep Colosseum runs consistently profitable, while the Glaive and Sunfire runes will help use up some Sunfire Dust. They're not... I don't think I've ever used this word. Okay, hold on. While the Glaive and Sunfire runes will help use up some Sunfire Dust, they're not ubiquitous enough to sink significant quantities, and Dishonest Quiver seemed our best option, especially with us not looking to power creep massively on weaponry at the moment. That's good. To keep it brief, charge systems like this are just as much about the item used to charge things. We don't propose them to be difficult or introduce tedium. Tedium? Okay. Or introduce tedium, but to try and find new ways to make content profitable without running into some of the other pitfalls we've mentioned here. Having said all that, we understand that feeling like you need to constantly check how many charges your gear has before embarking on a long session gets frustrating when there are so many things to keep track of. So we'd like to offer a corrupted variant, Dishonest Quiver, that consumes a whole bunch of dust in exchange for you never having to worry about it again. Well, this isn't a proper sync, since many of the players likely to get the most use out of their quiver and obtain one in the first place will tend towards corrupting their quivers and no longer sink Sunfire Dust. We understand the benefits for your experience for offering something like this. If we wind up in a position where we think we'd like to give Sunfire Dust a little boost, and that's a bridge we can cross when we come to it. I don't know if I necessarily agree with this. So my problem is, like, you're creating the sync so that you can, like, I mean, if the Sunfire Dust is untradeable, then this is fine. It being a corrupted variant is fine. But if it's tradable, then, like, people are just going to dump GP into corrupting this thing, and then tons of Sunfire Dust is going to come into the game, and it's going to be essentially worthless at some point. I mean, like, the Sunfire Dust sink is going to have to be huge in the runes and the armor and whatever else. The Glaive of Ralos, that's going to have to be a huge sink in those departments for it to make up for this. But I can understand. I don't want everything to have charges. Like, I don't want to take my Sunfire armor, check its charges. Take my Barrow's armor, check its charges. Take my quiver, check its charges. Like, I don't want to check everything, right? Like, not everything should have to check charges. Anyways, in the meantime, you'll still be able to charge your quiver if you're not quite ready to fork out for corrupting, but we'll aim to make upkeep relatively painless, more like Ancient Essence and Zoro's scales, and ensure that the Colosseum is fun above all else so that any upkeep feels dynamic and exciting rather than feeling like a grind. Okay, that's good. TLDR, Dishonest Quiver will be able to store 2+ ammo types, arrows, bolts, while equipped in the cape slot. The correct ammo type for the weapon you're currently using will be automatically selected. I'm curious how... Oh, so it stores 2 ammo types. So it can store 1 type of arrows and 1 type of bolts. It can't store 2 types of bolts or 2 types of arrows. Okay, that makes a little bit of sense. Now it says 2+ here. So does that mean that there's, like, other types of stuff that it can store? Like, will it be able to store rod arrows or something? Like, I don't know what else it would store. Interesting. Dishonest Quiver will remain a chargeable equipment piece, but you'll be able to corrupt it for a permanently charged version in exchange for a quantity of Sunfire Dust tradable, unique consumable item obtained from the Fortis Colosseum. So it is tradable. So people are just going to buy all the Sunfire Dust. When charged or corrupted, arrows and bolts fired from the quiver will gain additional +1 range strength and +10 range accuracy on top of the +3 range strength and +18 range accuracy provided by Dishonest Quiver itself. The bonuses are unchanged from before, but they will only apply to ammo that's stored in the quiver itself, meaning these additional benefits cannot apply to weapons like the bow of Fairdenon or the toxic blowpipe through the uncharged stats. Though the uncharged stats are still best in slot in all scenarios. With the longest section out of the way, let's talk about the Sunfire Fanatic gear. Love this. I love this gear. Sunfire Fanatic armor was our attempt at keeping things simple, even though the later waves and eventual endless runs of the Colosseum scale up to test even season PVMers. We still want there to be something in it for people looking to get their feet wet with some earlier waves. Initially, we proposed this set as a direct upgrade to Proselyte, slightly better defensive stats, +2 prayer bonus over its equivalent in each slot. By making this comparison to Proselyte, we saw a whole bunch of you come out to suggest we should reserve this space for continuation to the Temple Knight questline, so we'd like to propose an alternative. Okay, I would like another Temple Knight questline. I would love that. It would actually be dope if we saw a Temple Knight questline, like continuation in Varlamore. I would actually love it. So we'd like to propose an alternative. Let's look at that. Before we dive into the specifics of this alternative, though, it's worth us pointing out that while we do have some exciting quests on the far horizon, we're not sure when we'd feasibly pick up the Temple Knight / Sea Slug story to fill this space, so we'll keep the original proposal for Sunfire Fanatic armor in our back pocket in case it feels preferable to stick to our guns. Okay, so if you missed it before, these are the stats for the Sunfire Fanatic armor. To change things up, we put together an alternative approach to Sunfire Fanatic armor that slots in as a range pair hybrid slot. Oh. Let's go. I mentioned this in my last video. Because it had negative range stats, I was thinking, I was like, okay, so you're putting this stuff in the Fortis Colosseum next to a best in slot range cape, but this stuff has negative range bonus. I would at least like to see it have something. So to change things up, we put together an alternative approach, Sunfire Fanatic armor that slots in as a range pair hybrid set, beating out Crystal Armor's pair bonus, but with stats equivalent to Red D-Hide armor with the exception of the coif, though coming in slightly below Proselyte in terms of raw prayer bonus. Okay, that's actually pretty good. I like this. Yeah, this is pretty good. Still keeping things nice and simple, so let us know what you think about the change in approach. The fact that the stats are equivalent to Red D-Hide, though, I don't know if I like it that much. Because the thing is, like, you can just wear God D-Hide, and you'll have it, like, you'll have decent prayer bonus, but Black D-Hide range equivalent gear. But I guess the melee stats of it are a little bit better. Yeah, this one's tough. I mean, like, you can do cannon slayer tasks with this. You can do, I guess you could probably, like, with this, you could probably upgrade to, like, AFK Broadbolt Slayer or something. That is something you could probably do because, I mean, you're not going to end up using this unless you can get this before you get the Slayer Helm. Like, I don't know how easy this will be able to get from the Fortis Colosseum, but if this is super easy to get, you can get this first and then go range Slayer until you have a Slayer Helm. And then you take this out and you just use these two, but you could do like cannon tasks, broadbolt tasks, and just do stuff that's like super AFK tasks. You could probably even do chin tasks with this, but I don't know how efficient that would be versus like doing armor that boosts your range strength more. I think this is more of like an AFK range armor type thing. Okay, let's go ahead and move on. Pretty interesting. I like the proposal. I just don't think that it's valuable enough. Anyways, everything else beyond Dishonest Quiver and Sunfire Fanatic set, we didn't see a whole lot of chatter about our big ticket tradable unique, the Clay Brawlers, which is hopefully a good sign. Though it's still not too late for feedback on that front if you have any lingering questions or thoughts. Sunfire Runes drummed up a little bit of chatter, so we'd like to make a clarification or two quickly. First up, we saw a handful of people asking about how these Sunkissed stones would interact with the Tome of Fire, since many people using fire spells will be using the tome's inbuilt fire runes, thanks to burnt pages, to cast spells with. We'd like to propose the ability to combine some fire runes or dust with burnt pages to make searing pages, which would allow the Tome of Fire to provide the additional 10% minimum hit that some fire runes offer on their own. Okay. So okay, so you save a inventory slot by doing this, so that's fine. Beyond that, we saw some understandable nerves around the idea of a new rune, how it fits or makes sense, and wondering why fire spells are the ones getting all the love, or the more exists as a land without any rune altars. So we thought it'd be interesting to see how their available resources intersect with what we're used to over on the mainland, and while we haven't decided on the exact theming yet, we'll be ensuring that the creation of Sunfire Runes feels in keeping with our world and helps cement the ties between runecraft and magic as sister skills, while also not feeling like a chore for you irons out there. As for why fire spells are the ones getting all the love, it's largely because of the thematic ties to Ralos as a sun deity, and also because the current iteration of the standard spellbook has fire spells as the most damaging. We absolutely believe that this could prove to be an interesting reward. Okay, not sure what this is, but I think I have a guess. We absolutely believe that this could prove to be interesting rewards so as to explore with other elements in the future. That's definitely not right. I can't make out what that possibly could mean. I got nothing on this. Bro, it's 10 minutes after. I'm not gonna trip. Okay. The interesting reward to explore with other elements in the future, either by giving them unique additional effects and identities with the spellbook we currently have, or the potential for things like a standard spellbook reshuffle down the line and seeing how upgraded the elemental runes intersect with those. With how diverse the land, I actually really like the sound of that. With how diverse the landscape of Varlamore is, it's possible for us to keep exploring these themes across all elements. So if you're reading along and have any cool ideas or suggestions for other elements, then let us know. That's a wrap on everything we've got to update you on in terms of rewards. Before we sign off, we'd like to make one last clarification around glory to clear up something we saw a few questions about. Glory isn't a currency like Toggle, it's effectively a representation of your personal best PB performance. If two players finish a run of the Fortis Colosseum, but player A finishes faster and with fewer mistakes than player B, then player A will have higher glory. If player B then goes on to do a run even faster and with fewer mistakes, then player B would have higher glory. For untradeable rewards like Dishonest Quiver, potential cosmetics, or unlocks around the area, you'll need to have passed a certain glory threshold to unlock them, with the potential for requiring a completed run similar to purchasing a fighter torso from Barbarian Assault. With all that said, we're signing off for this updated segment. Let us know what you think across all the usual channels. We still got some time before polling, so have the ability to make further changes if they're necessary, and we'll be keeping an eye out for any feedback you have. Good luck on the games, stay safe, and happy scaping. And then down here is just the old, yeah, that's just the old one. I have video too. Maybe I will link the video in the description below if you want to read last week's news post about this. All in all, I like the explanations, the clarifications on some of this. I like that Dishonest Quiver got changed a little bit so that it's not overly buffing the Bofa or the Toxic Blowpipe. I like that. That's a pretty good change. I like that they are aware of not like creating content with not too much GP in mind, because GP does come into the game very rapidly, especially when new bosses come out and stuff. Sunfire Fanatic armor, not necessarily fond of these changes. I would have liked to keep the old suggestion. I definitely don't like this has one use, and it is just AFK range slayer, like with a crossbow or something. It's just AFK range, that's all it's meant for, and that's not very good. Sunfire runes. So the thing about Sunfire runes, if they do something like this, I really feel like we need some upgraded other elemental runes, like upgraded waters or something. Like maybe we get a Temperos challenge mode or something that's like actually difficult, and it gives upgraded water runes or something. I would love to see some upgraded other elemental runes that buff the in-game like elemental spells. I would love for all the in-game elemental spells to be like of similar power, but have like different effects of some kind. At least in my eyes, that seems good. It seems more immersive, is what it does. The way things are right now, it doesn't feel really immersive. It's more like just power and level based, like, oh, this is just a stronger spell, so it just does more. But they're all equivalent spells because they all use the same runes, right? They're just different elemental runes. But anyways, apart from that, all in all, a decent update, decent little post. Again, here's the entrance stuff, looking good. I'm liking it so far. Good changes. The Glaive of Ralos is fine for the most part. I really liked it. So yeah, I don't really have anything. So if you have anything, any opinions, or want to talk about it, leave a comment down below and we can discuss it there. And apart from that, if you didn't see last week's video about the previous preview of Fortis Colosseum, go ahead and check that out. I'll leave a link down in the description below. Without further ado, bid you all a good day.